What's going on, everybody? Isaac here with Civil Engineering Academy. I'm jumping on real quick to introduce our next podcast episode. It's going to be a good one. This is with Charles Thompson, or Chuck. Chuck is awesome. He's with the United States Public Health Service, and he's actually detailed with the Indian Health Services, or the IHS. And what he actually does is help Indian reservations with their wastewater. It's a really unique job. It's something that was really fun to learn more of. He actually studied engineering from the University of Maine, and he's actually began his studies to earn a master's degree from the University of Norwich, or Norwich University. It's been fun. He's been a member of our community, CEA community. He's also been a member of our course, the Ultimate Civil PE Review course, and so we've been helping him with that as well. But we detail a lot of what his job responsibilities are. We touch upon engineering, going into management, and kind of the difference between management and leadership, and a lot of other aspects dealing with what he does. I think it's a really fun episode, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So stay tuned, and it's coming right up. Charles, it's good to have you on the show. I'm excited that you've joined us. I did a quick introduction already with you, but just wanted to say hi and wondered if we could jump into maybe how you got into this awesome career and how you got started.
And about 18 years ago, I went to a job, a university job. I can't even remember what they're called now because I haven't been to them in so long. But it was held on the campus at the University of Maine, and I met this Commissioned Corps officer. And I recognized the uniform as a naval uniform. I grew up in an Air Force family, so I've been an Air Force brat. I knew a lot about the Air Force. I've lived on Air Force installations. And I have I think I'm pretty knowledgeable about the military. Anyway, I saw this fella standing at this college job thing, and I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, the uniform looks naval from the Navy, but I'm not sure, your epaulets are different. You have a caduceus and anchor as opposed to just an anchor." Anyway, he began to tell me about what the Commissioned Corps was. So I listened to him. I gave him some background about myself. I said, "Hey, I'm somehow we get on the idea that my mom is a member of Blackfeet Nation in Montana."
Wow.
So he immediately jumped on that and said, "Look, I can get your job this summer." And that's where I started. So I've been with the Indian Health Service 18 years. I've been in Maine. I've been in Reno, Nevada, Sparks, Nevada, Shiprock, New Mexico, Ukiah, California. And currently I'm stationed in New England, out on Cape Cod, working for the tribes in New England. So
that's great.
Basically what I do is I do water, wastewater, and solid waste projects, try to find funding. I provide the tribes with tribal utility consultation, help them out with their operation and maintenance of their systems as much as I can, with the resources that I have. And I also introduce them to other resources like Atlantic States Rural Water, or Atlantic States Water and Wastewater Association, or Maine Rural Water Association, or the rural water associations within the area, so that they can help them out with training. RCAP is another agency that I work with. So, as well as the US EPA, and they help them to stay, with the regulations of the Safe Drinking Water Act and Clean Water Act.
Wow, that's so interesting. So did you have how did you choose to go into that field of engineering, dealing with wastewater or Clean Water Act, dealing with water, the EPA, things of that nature? Or is that just the nature of where you're at?
Well, that's the nature of where I'm at. Okay. There are other avenues. There's facilities engineering. I've often thought I would like to maybe give that a try, but something about being stuck in a building, every day, all day. I spend a lot of time out in the open, looking at plants, visiting with tribal operators, and helping them out.
That's
and
great.
I enjoy that. So I enjoy working with the tribal folks. I think they're great people. They do the best that they can with what they have.
Sure.
So I try to help them maximize their resources. The biggest thing is I think what you learn is you try to really think outside the box.
What are some of their challenges? What do you see on your end with some of the challenges they face?
I think with a lot of the places that I've been to, the biggest challenge is that these tribal nations don't have a regular source of revenue, whether they don't have a tax base, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
They have a setup that's kind of like a small city, but they're not having taxes charged. Typically, they don't provide for a water fee. Although I think a lot of them are starting to understand that that's what they need to do in order to support their infrastructure.
So how do they fund it?
Well, a lot of the funding, that's one of the things that I do is because of the treaties and everything and all that's been provided between the government, the federal government, and the tribes, and along with Public Law 86-121, we use the resources to provide capital cost improvements, to provide safe drinking water, and the safe removal of wastewater through wastewater treatment.
That's great. This is an area that I am totally unfamiliar with, so this is actually really informative to me. So that's great. Is there? I mean, through this whole journey, is one of the things I like to ask: is there some lessons that you've learned going through this, or mistakes that you've seen dealing with what you're dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I've made mistakes. One of the things that I've really expressed to my supervisors is that, hey, look, I realize we're in civil engineering. I understand that we're supposed to think of everything that could go wrong and might go wrong and protect human life and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. Now, I've never had anything that anybody's gotten hurt. But I have made some mistakes that I've owned up to. And one thing that I know is, if you don't have a PE, even though you may think it's better out in the field and somebody else has stamped those drawings, don't change the drawing. Run it through the guy that stamped the drawings first. So that was a lesson that I learned. Very quickly. I mean,
what did you do? You changed the plan? Is that right?
Yeah, I did a change order to change some piping, and moved a manhole. I think I moved a manhole 10 feet, and then changed some piping. But along with that, there was a right of way that I should have done and didn't understand it, because based on the information that I found out, didn't realize that was a right of way. Right. So we put some pipe in, we got the project completed, and come to find out it was a right of way that shouldn't have been. Probably shouldn't have constructed there on that dirt road. Probably shouldn't have moved the manhole. There was consensus with the client, which happened to be the tribe, but there wasn't consensus between my superiors and me.
Gotcha.
So anyway.
Hey, well, that's a good lesson,
It is.
Run things through the engineer that stamped it. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, I still have my arms and legs, so I feel, I'm feeling good about that.
That's awesome.
But, communication's important, so.
Oh, yeah, it's huge. Most mistakes, I mean, at least from what I've seen, have been made when engineers aren't communicating, either with the field or, up the ladder. But somehow they kind of get in a black hole and they don't communicate with people. So that's a big deal. I wanted to touch upon your experience with the PE. You mentioned that a little bit beforehand and now. where are you at with your journey? What's some maybe tips that maybe you have that you could share, especially for if someone did start later or things like that?
Well, I'm sure anybody tuning into this knows that if you can get your PE closer to when you graduated, that's probably pretty helpful.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not the way that I did it. My journey with the PE, my journey with the PE has been on the ungraded road, if we keep it in the civil engineering realm. It's been pretty bumpy. I was never very good at taking exams or tests.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those guys that believes that tests are not a fair measure of somebody's knowledge. And I still buck it today. It's just really, I go to sit for an exam and it seems like I forget everything that I learned, or I forget how to do something. And, I don't know if it's test anxiety or maybe I don't study enough.
No, and I don't think
recently,
you're alone.
Yeah, recently it's been more difficult because, now I'm married. I have 4 children. They keep me very busy, and they're getting into that age group, 8 to 19, where they have their things that they want to do too, and you try to provide for them as best you can. And it seems like there's not enough hours in the day to do everything that you need to do. But I just recently took the exam. It was, as we were mentioning earlier, it was interesting that when I left the exam this past October, I usually feel really wiped out.
All right.
Like I had just been in a boxing match and was ready to just go home and lie down and take a nap. This time I didn't feel that way. I felt like I did when I got there in the morning. And I didn't really approach it with a different attitude. I just approached it that, hey, it's something I got to do. I got to get this. This is going to benefit me. And I think the other thing is, as I mentioned to you earlier, I didn't take in so many books.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had one notebook that I took in. It had the civil engineering, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call them reference sheets.
Yes.
That give you all the formulas. In that notebook, I'd also put in all of the problems that I had solved correctly. And I referenced them. I made a table of contents with each problem and what it was called, so I had a quick reference to see what the problem was. I took my CERM with me. And as I recall, I think I still have it here on my desk. That's why I'm looking over this way. I had the 15th edition, so I brought that with me.
Well, based on your background, you had a lot of books to choose from. Looking at that bookshelf.
Yeah. I don't think any of those are engineering books.
Oh, okay. Well, and just so people know, Chuck was actually a member of our course, the Ultimate Civil PE Review course. Yes. And so you went through that program as well. It sounds like just talking that was able to help you a little bit.
It was. I mean, I think what I've heard over the years is that the more problems you solve, the more prepared you'll be. Mm-hmm. And the Civil Engineering Academy course did just that. We solved a lot of problems. You guys gave good examples of a lot of problems and how to solve them. And some of them you even had a couple of different ways to solve them. And I think that was helpful for me because I could actually see how the solution was, how you got through this to the solution. And I think the other thing to remember too is if you're, a late bloomer and you graduated college like myself 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you even forget how long ago you graduated. If you haven't, if you didn't sit down and take the exam right away and get it under your belt, then you're now at a disadvantage because all of the questions that are on the morning exam are things that you're not familiar with. Especially when you're specializing in water and wastewater and doing those types of designs, and I think too, you have to make a decision. What am I going to study and what am I not going to study? You got to break it out. I took to heart the whole idea of crushing the AM exam.
Yes.
Only part of that AM exam that I wasn't really really sure about was the structural part.
Mm-hmm.
Structural was not something that I never thought I would build bridges, so I never worried about it.
Well, we kind of all go into one specific area, right? And so
yeah,
the whole body of knowledge of engineering is just kind of hard to get a hold of. So, getting a review course will get you more exposure to those things, and I'm glad that could help you a little bit. So,
oh, it's great. Yeah, so the course was great, and it really did. It was a benefit to me.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing some things about that. I'm curious if you wanted to talk to somebody that wanted to pursue a career similar to yours, what advice would you give to them?
Patience. I would give, be patient. If you could go to USPHS.gov and see what the United States Public Health Service has to offer. I found it to be a very rewarding career. I was just telling my area director the other day that it is just amazing to see the looks on the families' faces when you've provided them with safe drinking water and a safe way to dispose of their wastewater. I don't know if many people know this, but out in the Southwest, the Navajo Nation is quite a large reservation. And when I was stationed out there, there was an estimated 12,000 families that didn't have water to the tap. They didn't have a well and water coming to their home. They still used outhouses or pit privets. So it's an amazing thing to think that here we live in the United States, and the majority of people in the United States have water running to their faucet. But there are still people in this country that, now, either by choice or by circumstance, they don't have water coming to their house.
That's very interesting. And there's huge organizations like Engineers Without Borders that are helping places in other countries. It's interesting to think that here in the U.S. we have that very same problem. How can people get involved? How can they help? Is there a way they can help?
That's a good question, Isaac. I'm what I see is what I'm doing as help.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
I guess I'm curious if these other organizations like these Engineers Without Borders or people that want to just help in general, if there's other ways or avenues that they can, I guess, without going to the IHS or a government agency.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the answer to that, but if you know, that would be nice. But
well, what I do know is that a lot of these places, it will take considerable capital costs. One of the things that we do as an agency and our fiduciary responsibility is we've set unit costs to serve homes. And if we can't meet the threshold of the unit cost and stay below that, we find that an infeasible project. It's no different than what we do in our regular engineering lives when we put feasibility studies together to find out if a project's feasible.
Yep.
So there's that. And with the number of families that are out on the Navajo, for instance, providing them with water is just so costly in dropping the pipe in the ground, providing the booster stations to get the water where it needs to go.
Are they the largest reservation? Are there other reservations that have those kind of totals?
I'm not really sure. I only know that because that's where I was stationed. I think maybe up in Alaska where they have Alaska Natives is another place.
Okay.
But as I said before, is if you decide to get into this, it's very rewarding. It's just an amazing thing to see how people are so appreciative of what we can do to provide them with this, what the rest of us take for granted.
That's fantastic. Well, I want to ask you some just kind of quick answer questions. You can answer them quickly, whatever you want to do.
Sure.
these are just kind of fun questions to ask you. What's one common myth about your profession or field you maybe want to debunk?
That we know it all.
Okay.
Sometimes we don't. We are solution oriented, but there are some times that there are just some things that we just can't do right now. Eventually, someday maybe, but engineers are pretty smart people, but that doesn't mean they're smart in everything. Like we've talked about, the exam presents a myriad of different categories in engineering, and sometimes we can solve those problems and sometimes we can't, but we do the best that we can to help people and put safe things out there.
Yeah, that's great. What's the best advice you've ever received, or just good advice in general?
I think good advice that I've received as an engineer is to, and I think it's pretty simple. It's just, try to do the right thing.
That's great.
Use your talents to be helpful, and use your talents to be there for people that aren't there, that aren't able to understand or aren't able to do it.
Perfect. Another one, what's a personal habit that contributes to your success as an engineer?
I think a personal habit is you treat people as you'd want to be treated. I know on some instances there's been people that I've worked with who are, let me back this up a bit. I'm sure you're familiar, Isaac, with some engineers kind of you get the feeling they have a chip on their shoulder, and they're, they don't really want to listen to what you have to say. You have to take that with a grain of salt and think to yourself, that's not the person that I want to be. I want to be an engineer that thinks outside the box, but I also want to be open to other opinions and listen to what other people have, especially if there's somebody that you're supervising.
Yeah.
Because
I've learned a lot, but the difference between like engineering and the crews that actually build the stuff. And when I can connect with them on design ideas or issues they see on the field versus what I see on a screen, that is a huge leg up and can help resolve a lot of issues before something gets out in the field. So,
absolutely. I think an important aspect, and that brings up a good point. I hadn't even thought of it until just now. You mentioned that, Isaac, is that involve those people, those end users that are going to use what you're going to design. Because the more you involve them, the better the design is for them. And, it's nice to have, a lot of times, to have all these bells and whistles, but sometimes they don't want them. They want to keep it simple and do work within our budgets or work within our operation and maintenance program. And you can't do any better than getting it straight from the guys that are going to be using what you're going to be designing.
That's great. Well, let's go to this one. Who's someone that you look up to and why? You mentioned a certain general before.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I wish I had this person around to mentor me was General Patton. I always thought that he was somebody that was a go-getter. I mean, he had a horrible way of motivating people, but he knew how to get things done. I mean, if you read a little bit about General Patton and what he accomplished, it was just amazing. And something else that really caught me about him was that he which is not mentioned because I think of the way some of his language, but he was very he seemed to be religious and had an affinity for our Heavenly Father, and it was interesting to know that about him, and that he had thought he'd been in other wars and other times. And it's just he's just to me somebody that I wish I could meet, and maybe someday I will.
That's great. I agree. I've seen documentaries with him in it. I've always been in awe of what he's been able to do, but I think you bring up a good reminder. It's good to read up on those great leaders. So, if I can find a biography, or if you know of one, that would be fun to share with people. That's great. How about this one? What's a resource? You kind of touched upon that. Maybe it's this biography to go read, and we can leave it at that. But is there any other resources that you would recommend to anyone in the audience? Is something, it could be a software that they need to, if they're looking into going into wastewater, maybe they should polish up on. It could be a book, like you mentioned, with General Patton. Anything that would help our audience either get to know, the field you're in a little better, or General Patton, or anything else. Is there any resources you'd recommend to our audience?
Well, one of the books that I didn't take it with me this time, and I wished I had. There's actually two books. The Civil Engineering Handbook is a book that I purchased a long time ago. I think I have the 5th edition.
Okay. Probably in that bookshelf behind you. Just kidding.
Well, I have books behind me and books to the right of me and books to the left of me. So I have to look around and see where they're at. But the Civil Engineering Handbook was one that I thought was really handy. It has a number of different topics in it. It's much like the CERM. It's a jack of all, master of none.
Yeah.
But I think it explains it in a different way. I think the other book that I like in the wastewater industry is the Wastewater Treatment and Reuse. The latest edition of that I have is a Metcalf and Eddy. I think it's edition 15, 14, maybe something later. It has a white cover. I'm sure anybody in the wastewater industry will recognize it. That's a good book. But I also think the older editions are good because they touch on different things in a different way. And there was a book that you have on your reference list too that I liked, and I don't think I mentioned it when I with the information that I sent to you, and that was the I don't see it right handy.
That's okay. If anybody's interested in references that Chuck's talking about, you can go to civilengineeringacademy.com, and we have resources on one of the tabs on the top, and you can go find resources for every depth exam. And we list some books there. So that's probably where you found a reference for the wastewater book that you're referencing. And, we try to list books in there that other people have mentioned to us. So if others have books that they like, let me know, and I'll put them on there as a resource for the next person that's probably studying for wastewater treatment. So that's kind of,
I think I see it on your shelf behind you.
Oh, yeah. Somewhere over there. Go look
right under, I think you have the CERM sitting there, and it's right underneath that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. It's the green one.
Oh, yeah. Dr. Goswami's. You like Goswami's book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one I took with to the exam.
There you go. Yes. Go get that one. We'll link that one for people if they're interested. If you're preparing for the PE, Dr. Goswami's got some good stuff too. So that's great. Chuck, if you had all the knowledge in the world, what's something you'd like to be part of in the world of engineering? Or are you already part of it?
Yeah, like I think I'm already part of it.
Job.
Yeah, I'm part of it. I really, really do enjoy what I'm doing here. I enjoy meeting with the people and the operators that I work with and work for. And I continuously say that I work for more than I work with because I'm here for them. And I just enjoy it. And I would recommend it to anybody. And I guess if you should decide to come into this business, you can certainly find me relatively easily in any global address book that the IHS has. So,
well, it's interesting because we connected. I had sent out an email and we were talking about kind of leadership or engineers going into managers and becoming leaders. Did you have any thoughts surrounding that? engineers becoming managers, or the difference between leadership and management?
I do. I mean, I think the first thing that I think engineers make great managers in general. Like with any field, there are some folks that are just not cut out for it. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing that one could remember is when you get into a leadership position is remember where you came from. Remember the people that helped you get there, and be those people, and provide the mentorship.
Great.
One thing that I've often thought about is if I were to get into one of those positions, I would be the person that people could come to and talk about things, whether it be personal or job, and help them and guide them to fill my shoes someday.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid that somebody's going to, take your position. Don't be afraid to help somebody along, because we all want to advance our careers, but we want to advance them through the knowledge of somebody else or other people, and be a part of the solution rather than a part of the problem. So that's what I would say. Remember where you come from. Be a mentor to those as often as you can. It helps you hone your skills, and be willing to talk to people and try to put yourself in their shoes.
That's great advice.
And be humble. Be humble about it.
I've noticed that as people advance in their careers, they usually are too busy. They're working on their own stuff, and they don't want to take on the role of a mentor with someone that's just learning the ropes again. But I think you're right. It does hone your skills. If you're humble about it and know, where you started and the resources you wish you had, be that person. So I love that advice. That's great.
Well, I think if you do that, it brings you back to where you were at, where that person is at.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps you to be, it doesn't only hone your skills, but I think it makes you a better person.
Yeah.
Because now you start thinking
advice.
about, I used to be that. That's where I used to be at. And I think it's helpful.
Well, good. Thanks for sharing that. Well, this has been fun, Chuck. Thanks for jumping on with me. Is there any last piece of guidance that you want to share, or the best way that the audience could connect with you if maybe they had questions or wanted to join up and just ask you how you're doing, and maybe they have questions about the PE and want your experience?
Sure. If somebody wanted to send me an email, I'll give you my personal email. My personal email is chuck1166@hotmail.com.
Okay.
If somebody wanted to shoot an email over to me and ask me questions, I'd be happy to answer them as best I can. If I don't know the answer, I will find it or give you the resource to find that answer. I think the other thing is something that's very important is I don't know how many people have seen the stork in the water with the frog hanging out of its mouth, and the frog has grabbed the stork's neck while he's in the stork's mouth and said, "Don't give up." So that's what I'm saying. Don't give up. Continue to strive forward and do the best that you can. And if you're having troubles, I'll be the first to admit the PE test has not been something that I've enjoyed.
Yeah, it's a
but I
journey.
haven't. I've taken a number of different courses to try to pass that thing, but I'm not giving up. I will continue to strive to get the PE, and I'll continue to have to take the exam. So that's what you just keep doing.
You keep doing it. Well, you know what? You're going to pass because you took the ultimate civil PE review course, and we're going to help you get there, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be good. Well, thank you for joining me, Chuck. This has been really fun. It's been very informative. I had no idea about Indian reservations and that they were lacking even good water. And just your tips and tools and resources, everything that you've shared today, I think will help aspire people that are coming on to get the PE later in life. But also just, you have general wisdom that was great advice for everybody. So thank you for doing that.
Isaac, thank you. I've enjoyed this interview, and I'm thankful that I'm able to pass on the information that I have.
Okay. Thank you. We'll see you later.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Our internet is not working very well today. The battery's almost dead. That was a great interview with Chuck. I hope you learned a lot. I know I did. I had no idea about Indian reservations, that we even struggled with water resources here in the United States. So hopefully you learned a little bit. I know I did. Hopefully my internet connection didn't tank because I noticed everything was choppy. It probably did, so I apologize for that. But we should hopefully piece together a video and an audio that you can use and hopefully enjoy that. So hopefully that was good. I enjoyed it. All right, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.